Coffee spilled on my cheap rug right when the notification dinged, finally blocking my toxic sister. Family is better without her. 62 likes. Aunt Carol commented a praying hands emoji. My stomach didn't drop. It just twisted into a knot of cold, exhausting dread. This wasn't a mistake. It was war. The screen of my phone was cracked right down the middle, a jagged spiderweb of glass that distorted Harper's profile picture. She was smiling in it, sun-kissed and holding a ridiculous oversized margarita, looking like the patron saint of carefree millennials. Behind the glass, the words glowed with a sickening permanence. Finally blocking my toxic sister. I sat back in my thrifted armchair. The faux leather was peeling at the armrests, and a flake of it stuck to the sweat on my palm. It was Tuesday, 11:15 a.m. The apartment was quiet except for the low, asthmatic rattle of the refrigerator and the distant whine of a garbage truck backing up in the alley. I breathed in, tasting the lingering scent of burnt toast and old coffee. I didn't cry. That's the first thing people assume happens when you get publicly disowned by your own blood. They think you fall to your knees, clutching your chest, weeping at the injustice of it all. I didn't do that. I just felt my jaw lock tight, my back teeth grinding together with a faint click. I felt embarrassed. A hot, prickly flush crawled up the back of my neck. I scrolled down with a numb, detached thumb. She had chosen one of those Facebook backgrounds for the text, the one with the blue ombre and the little floating 3D hearts. It made the assassination of my character look like a baby shower invitation. It takes a lot of courage to cut out family, the post continued, the font bold and aggressive against the cartoon hearts. But my peace is more important than keeping a relationship with someone who constantly tears me down, gaslights my reality, and refuses to support my mental health journey. Blood doesn't give you a free pass to be a bully. Here's to a drama-free chapter. Therapy speak, the ultimate weapon of the modern manipulator. Harper had been going to a new counselor for 3 months, and suddenly every slight against her was gaslighting. Every boundary I set was abandonment, and her refusal to pay rent was a mental health journey. I looked at the comments. 62 likes had climbed to 74 in the 2 minutes I had been staring at the screen. So proud of you, babe. Protect your energy, wrote Chloe, our cousin who hadn't spoken to either of us at Christmas because she was too busy vaping in the garage. Sending love. I know how hard this is. She'll realize what she lost, wrote a woman named Pam, who I recognized vaguely from Harper's brief, disastrous stint at a dental hygienist program 5 years ago. And then there was Aunt Carol, praying for healing in this family. Let go and let God. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half cough. It scraped the back of my throat like dry leaves. I set the phone face down on the scratched laminate coffee table. I stood up, walked into the narrow kitchen, and grabbed a sponge. The coffee I had spilled earlier was soaking into the cheap, beige fibers of the rug. I knelt down and started scrubbing. The physical friction felt good. The smell of the citrus dish soap cut through the stale air of the apartment. I scrubbed until my knuckles ached, and the knuckles of my right hand bumped hard against the floorboard, tearing a tiny strip of skin. A drop of blood welled up, bright and stark against my pale skin. Toxic. The word rattled around in my skull. It's such a lazy word. It absolves the speaker of any responsibility. You don't have to explain what the person did. You don't have to provide context or admit your own faults. You just slap a biohazard label on a human being and walk away clean. My phone buzzed against the coffee table. A heavy, sustained vibration. It wasn't a text. It was a call. I didn't have to look to know who it was. I walked over, wiping my wet, soapy hands on my jeans. The denim was stiff and damp against my thighs. I flipped the phone over. Mom. I stared at the name. The screen dimmed, then brightened again as the ringing persisted. I could picture her perfectly, standing in her immaculate kitchen, aggressively wiping down the granite countertops with a microfiber cloth, the phone pinned between her ear and her shoulder. She would be breathing fast, her heart racing, terrified of the social fallout. Harper was the squeaky wheel, the fragile bird, the golden disaster. I was the shock absorber. I was supposed to keep the machine running. I swiped the green icon and brought the phone to my ear. Did you see it? No hello. Her voice was thin, pitched a half octave higher than normal. Yes, Mom, I said. My voice sounded flat, deadened by the acoustic foam of my own exhaustion. I saw it. Paige, what did you do? Mom's voice cracked. Behind the crackle of the cellular connection, I could hear the aggressive squeak of the microfiber cloth against the granite. She was scrubbing hard. I didn't do anything, Mom. People don't just post things like that for no reason. Her breathing was shallow. Aunt Carol is texting me. Carol, Paige, you know how she talks. She's going to tell the entire congregation by Sunday. What happened? Did you two fight again? I closed my eyes. The knot in my stomach tightened, sour and hot. We didn't fight. I just told her no. No to what? I leaned against the wall, sliding down until I was sitting on the cold linoleum floor of the hallway. The baseboard dug uncomfortably into my spine. She wanted me to co-sign a lease. Silence on the other end. The squeaking stopped. A lease? Mom finally asked, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. For the apartment downtown? The one she can't afford? Yes, she asked yesterday. I told her I wasn't putting my name on a legal document when she hasn't held a job for more than 4 months since 2023. You didn't have to say it like that, Mom pleaded, slipping seamlessly into her role as Harper's eternal defense attorney. You know she's sensitive about her career right now. You know she's struggling with her anxiety. My credit score doesn't care about her anxiety, Mom. I heard Mom suck her teeth. It was a sharp, wet sound of disapproval. You can be so hard, Paige, so unyielding, it wouldn't have killed you to let her down gently. Now look at this mess. You need to call her. Apologize for upsetting her, and ask her to take the post down. I opened my eyes. The apartment suddenly felt suffocatingly small. No. Paige, I'm not calling her. I'm not apologizing. She dragged me into the town square so everyone could throw tomatoes, and you want me to hand her a napkin? I gripped the phone tighter, my voice rising, vibrating with a sudden, sharp anger. If she wants to block me, she can block me. I'm done. I hung up before she could respond. I tossed the phone onto the rug. It landed with a soft, pathetic thud. I pulled my knees up to my chest. The smell of the citrus soap on my hands was giving me a headache. The truth was, Mom was right about one thing. Had times been hard. When I told Harper no, I hadn't been a calm, rational adult practicing healthy boundaries. The internet loves to pretend that setting boundaries is this peaceful, Zen-like process where you serenely state your needs and float away on a cloud of self-actualization. It wasn't like that. It was ugly. It had happened in this exact apartment. Less than 24 hours ago, Harper had come over unannounced, smelling overwhelmingly of vanilla body mist and stale iced coffee. She had paced around my living room, frantically waving a glossy brochure for a luxury apartment complex. It has a rooftop pool, Paige, she had said, her eyes wide, manic. If I have a nice place, I'll be more productive. I can finally start my social media management business. I just need a guarantor. You make good money. It's just a signature. I had been standing by the sink, washing a single cereal bowl. I remembered the slick feel of the ceramic, the gray dishwater. I was exhausted from a 50-hour week at the logistics firm. I can't do it, Harper, I had said, keeping my back to her. Why not? Her voice instantly whined, stretching out the vowels. It's literally just a formality. I have the security deposit. Because you owe me $3,000 from the last time you needed, just a little help with rent. Because your car was repossessed. Because I am not ruining my financial future, so you can pretend you're an influencer by a rooftop pool. I turned around. I should have stopped there. That was the boundary. That was the facts. But then I looked at her. I looked at her perfectly blown-out hair, her expensive manicured nails that she paid for while borrowing money from our parents for groceries. I felt a lifetime of resentment bubble up in my throat, the dark, ugly sludge of being the reliable sister, the boring sister, the sister who was expected to absorb the shock of Harper's chaotic life. I wanted to hurt her. That's the imperfect, raw truth of it. I wanted to see the delusion crack. You're almost 30, I had snapped, my voice sharp like a cracked whip in the small room. You're not a victim of circumstance, Harper. You're a parasite. You bleed Mom and Dad dry, and now you want to bleed me dry. Grow up. She had frozen. The color drained from her face, leaving her foundation looking thick and orange against her pale skin. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. For a split second, I saw real panic in her eyes, not the manufactured anxiety she used for sympathy. Then, the tears came. Not the ugly, snotty tears of true heartbreak, but the delicate, overflowing wells of the deeply offended. She had snatched her purse off the couch, a designer knockoff that cost more than my car insurance, and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the framed poster in the hallway rattled. Now, sitting on the floor, I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes until sparks danced in the darkness. Parasite. It was a cruel word. I knew it the second it left my mouth. It tasted like ash. But sitting here now, staring at the phone that held her public declaration of my toxicity, the guilt began to curdle into something colder. I picked the phone back up. I didn't open Facebook. Instead, I opened my bank app. I looked at my savings account. It was modest, but it was mine. It wasn't being drained to fund a rooftop delusion. The screen buzzed again. A text from Dad. Your mother is crying in the kitchen. Please just fix this page. You're the older sister. I stared at the gray text bubble. The familiar weight of that phrase, times you're the older sister, times pressed down on my chest like a physical anvil. It meant, you know better. You can handle the pain. She can't. I felt a sudden, sharp prickle of heat behind my eyes. Not tears, anger, a deep, bone-rattling fury. I tapped the screen. I drafted a reply to my father. I can't fix a bridge she burned down, Dad. I'm sorry. I hit send. Then, my finger hovered over Harper's contact in my phone. I went to her profile. I saw her name, her number, the little sun-kissed photo. I scrolled down to the bottom of the contact page. The red letters glared up at me. Block this caller. She had posted about it for the world to see, milking it for every drop of sympathetic serotonin the internet could provide. But she hadn't actually done it. She never did. She needed the door cracked open just enough to see if I was watching. My thumb rested on the glass. The apartment hummed around me. I pressed the red text. Are you sure you want to block this contact? I hit confirm. The screen blinked. It was done. The silence in the apartment didn't change, but suddenly, the air felt just a fraction lighter to breathe. By Thursday, the silence in my apartment had hardened into something physical. It felt like atmospheric pressure. I woke up with my jaw aching. The muscles in my neck pulled taut like guitar strings. I had ground my teeth all night, fighting phantom battles in my sleep. The logistics firm where I worked was a cavern of gray cubicles and humming fluorescent lights. Usually, the sheer monotony of the place bored me to tears. That morning, I clung to it. I spent 4 hours tracking freight shipments from Omaha to Seattle. I stared at the spreadsheets until the numbers blurred into black smears. The click-clack of my mechanical keyboard was a steady, rhythmic metronome, a counterpoint to the chaotic static in my head. Brenda, the payroll manager whose desk sat opposite mine, popped her head over the partition around noon. She smelled faintly of stale cigarette smoke and cheap lavender hand sanitizer. You look like you're chewing on glass, Paige, she said, her reading glasses sliding down her nose. Everything okay? Just a headache, I lied, rubbing the bridge of my nose. My fingers felt icy. Drink water, she commanded, before dropping back out of sight. I didn't drink water. Instead, I grabbed my phone and went to the break room. It was empty, smelling sharply of microwaved fish and burnt popcorn. I sat at a wobbly Formica table, the plastic chair digging into the back of my thighs, and I did the one thing I had promised myself I wouldn't do. I opened Facebook. I had blocked Harper's number, but I hadn't blocked her profile yet. I told myself it was just for reconnaissance, just to see the blast radius. The post had mutated. It was no longer just a status update, it was a digital monument to her victimhood. 140 likes, 42 comments. She had replied to almost all of them. Pam, you deserve so much better, sweetie. Don't let her dim your light. Harper, thank you, Pam. It's a grieving process, honestly, mourning the sister I thought I had. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Mourning. She was talking about me like I had died in a tragic accident, not like I had simply refused to co-sign a lease. It was a masterclass in narrative control. She was the brave survivor. I was the cold, unfeeling obstacle to her happiness. My thumb hovered over the screen. The urge to comment, to defend myself, to tear down her fragile, constructed reality with hard, unyielding facts was overwhelming. I wanted to type out the exact dollar amount she owed me. I wanted to post screenshots of the frantic, manipulative texts she had sent me over the years. I wanted to drag the ugly truth out into the harsh, fluorescent light, but I didn't. I looked at the wobbly table. I looked at the smear of ketchup someone had left near the napkin dispenser. If I engaged, I was back in the mud with her. I would be validating her narrative that we were two equals in a toxic feud, rather than a responsible adult cutting off a leech. I navigated to her profile, clicked the three little dots, and hit block. The digital tether snapped. She was gone. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, but the relief didn't come. That's the lie they sell you about cutting off toxic family. They tell you it's a sudden, glorious liberation. They don't tell you about the phantom limb syndrome. For 32 years, my brain had been wired to anticipate Harper's crises. My nervous system was permanently calibrated to brace for her impact. Without her, there was a void. And the void was terrifying. When I got home that evening, the air in the apartment felt heavy and stale. I opened a window, letting in the muggy, exhaust-choked city air. I poured myself a glass of cheap Pinot Grigio. It tasted metallic and thin. My phone vibrated on the counter. A text from Mom. "Your father's blood pressure is up. He didn't sleep at all last night. Please, Paige, just call her. Be the bigger person. We can't handle this division." I stared at the screen. The wine turned sour in my stomach. The manipulation was seamless. It wasn't about Harper's feelings anymore. It was about Dad's health. I was no longer just a bad sister. I was a bad daughter, actively endangering my aging parents. I typed out a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted it. Finally, I wrote, "Mom, I love you, but I will not set myself on fire to keep Harper warm anymore. Please stop asking me to." I hit send. Then, I turned the phone off entirely. I put it in a kitchen drawer, next to the spare batteries and takeout menus. I walked into the living room, sat in the peeling armchair, and drank the bad wine in the silence. It was lonely. It was a deep, hollow, bone-scraping kind of lonely. But as the hours ticked by, the tight muscles in my neck slowly, agonizingly, began to loosen. 6 weeks later, a Tuesday in mid-July. The heat outside was oppressive, baking the city sidewalks until they shimmered, but inside my apartment, the window AC unit hummed a steady, rattling tune. I was standing in the kitchen, chopping an onion. The sharp, sulfurous smell stung my eyes, drawing real, physical tears that felt strangely cathartic. I scraped the diced pieces into a hot skillet with a splash of olive oil. The sizzle was loud and violently satisfying. Things had changed. Not in a cinematic, overnight makeover kind of way. My apartment was still small. My job was still boring. My cheap rug still had a faint, faded stain, where the coffee had spilled on the day of the Facebook post. But the internal landscape was entirely different. I was sleeping through the night. My jaw no longer ached when I woke up. I had extra money in my savings account, money that would have inevitably gone toward fixing whatever emergency Harper had manufactured this month. I hadn't spoken to her. I hadn't seen her. My relationship with my parents, however, was surviving on life support. We spoke once a week, tense, superficial conversations that felt like walking through a minefield. We talked about the weather, my dad's tomatoes, the traffic on the interstate. We never mentioned the ghost in the room. Until that evening. The phone rang just as I was dumping a can of crushed tomatoes into the skillet. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, picked up the receiver, and saw Dad's name. "Hey, Dad," I said, stirring the sauce with a wooden spoon. "Paige." His voice was heavy, dragging like a sack of wet cement. He sounded 10 years older than he had a month ago. "What's wrong?" I asked, though my stomach didn't plummet. The automatic panic response had finally been unlearned. I just felt a weary resignation. I heard a heavy sigh crackle through the speaker. "It's your sister." Of course it was. I turned the heat down on the stove. "What happened?" "She got evicted," Dad said, his voice barely above a whisper. "From that place she was staying at with her friends. She didn't pay her share for 3 months. They packed her stuff in garbage bags and left it on the curb. She's here, Paige. She moved back into her old bedroom this afternoon." I leaned against the kitchen counter. The linoleum was cool against my bare feet. I closed my eyes, picturing it. The theatrical tears, the hauling of trash bags, the immediate regression to a teenager demanding to be taken care of. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said. And I meant it. I felt a profound, heavy pity for him. "She's a mess, Paige," he continued, the desperation bleeding into his tone. "She needs a car to get to job interviews. Mine is in the shop, And your mother needs hers for work. I was wondering. He trailed off, the silence hanging thick and awkward in the air. He didn't want to ask. He was ashamed. I could hear the humiliation in his hesitation. No, Dad, I said quietly. Just for a week, Paige. Just until… No. I kept my voice steady, stripped of any anger or venom. It was just a fact. A wall. I'm not lending her my car. She won't put gas in it. She won't take care of it. And I need it to get to work. Paige, please. We are drowning here. The phrase hit me right in the chest. We are drowning. I looked at the simmering sauce on the stove. The smell of garlic and basil filled the small kitchen. I had bought the ingredients with my own money. I was cooking a meal in a quiet, safe space that I paid for. I wasn't drowning. For the first time in my life, I was swimming. I know you are, Dad, I said softly, the ache in my throat thickening. But you're choosing to drown. You keep jumping in the water to save her, and she just keeps pulling you under. I won't do it anymore. I can't. She's family, he said, his voice breaking. It was the ultimate trump card, the final guilt trip. Family shouldn't destroy you, I replied. There was a long pause. I heard a muffled voice in the background, Mom, probably asking what I was saying. Then, Dad cleared his throat. Okay, Paige, I have to go. I love you, Dad, I said. I know. Goodbye. The line clicked dead. I set the phone down on the counter. I didn't cry, but my hands were shaking slightly. The finality of it was staggering. I had just watched the blast radius expand, and for the first time, I was safely outside of it. They were in the crater, and I was standing on the ridge, watching the smoke clear. I walked over to the stove. I gave the sauce one final stir, turned off the burner, and scooped a portion into a bowl. I carried it to the small dining table by the window. Outside, the streetlights were flickering on, casting long, amber shadows across the pavement. A couple was walking a dog down below. A siren wailed dimly in the distance. The world was spinning on, entirely indifferent to the microscopic tragedies of my family. I took a bite of the food. It was hot, rich, and grounding. I thought about the Facebook post, finally blocking my toxic sister. Family is better without her. Harper had written it as a weapon, a public execution designed to punish me for stepping out of line. She thought she was banishing me to the wilderness. But as I sat there in the quiet hum of my apartment, eating a warm meal, feeling the steady, unbroken rhythm of my own heartbeat, I realized she had gotten one thing exactly right. I was finally blocked from the toxicity, and my life was entirely better without her in it. I didn't need to post it online to make it true. I just had to live it. I took another bite, the silence wrapping around me like a heavy, protective blanket. And for the first time in 32 years, I felt completely and utterly safe. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this narrative about setting impossible boundaries, navigating family toxicity, and finding your own peace resonated with you, please hit that like button to let me know. Share this video with anyone who might be struggling with a similar situation. They aren't alone. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming deeply human stories. Stay strong, and see you next time.